here's some examples to solve for x using factoring. So this says factor and solve for x. If it was a function, you would say find x and stuff. These aren't functions, but so just factor and solve for x. Here we have x squared minus 8 equals 0. The first thing you want to do is set everything, move everything to one side so that it's equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and move my constant here. I have plus 1. So I positive 1. So to move it to the left hand side of my equal to, I'm going to subtract 1. So that's always your first step with factoring. Move everything to the one side so it's equal to 0. Minus 8 minus 1 is minus 9. So x squared minus 9 equals 1 minus 1 is 0. That's step 1. Set equal to 0 by moving everything to one side. After you've done that, then you want to see what two things can I multiply to get me x squared minus 9. If you don't remember, with these, when you see x squared minus a number that's also squared, remember, you might remember your special products or you might not. So remember that a plus b times a minus b is equal to a squared minus b squared. So that means, for example, something like x squared minus 16, that will factor out into 16 is the same thing as 4 squared, right? So that will factor into x plus 4 times x minus 4. Or something like x squared minus 25. 25 is what number squared? 5, right? 5 times 5. So that will factor into x plus 5 times x minus 5. So we can use that thing we can use this right here to help us with this. So we have x squared minus 3, 9 equals 0. So 9 is the same thing as 3 squared. So this means that x squared minus 3 squared minus 7 plus 3 squared equals 0. So this is going to factor into, I'm going to erase this now. X minus 3, x plus 3 times x minus 3. X squared minus 9 is the same thing as x plus 3 times x minus 1 equals 0. Once you've done that, you're done factoring. So here are my factors, x plus 3 and x minus 3. Now to solve, I'm just going to solve each one of my part. Remember that the only way that two numbers multiplying each other equals 0 is if at least one of them is 0. For example, 3 times 0 is 0, right? Or 0 times 4 is 0. So at least one of them has to be 0. So we're going to solve in two cases. So it's either that x plus 3 is 0, equals 0, or x minus 3 is equal to 0. That's the only way where these two equal, all their both equals 0. So then we solve for the two cases. So we get x plus 3, we got to subtract it from both sides. We end up with x equals 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. And we have x minus 3, so we got to do the opposite, minus plus 3 on both sides. We get x equals 0 plus 3. Once I'm done with that, I have my two answers. So my answer is x equals negative 3 and positive 3. Let's do example 2. So we have 2x squared minus 198 equals 2. If you see a number in there, you want to see if you can so first step, set everything, move everything to one side. So it's equal to 0. So we have this equal to 2 over here. I'm going to do the opposite of positive 2, which is subtract negative 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I end up with 2x squared minus 198 minus 2 is minus 200. Remember, if you have the same sign, you're going to add and take the sign, right? It's equal to 2 minus 2, which is 0. So now I've moved the 2 to the other side and set everything equals 0, which is what we want. After you're done with step 1 then of factoring, then you're going to go ahead and see if there's anything you can I'll factor out first that they have in common. So we have 2x squared and 200. Is there any number that can go into both 2x squared and 200? 2, right? Yeah, so let's remove 2 from there. So when I factor out 2, which is to divide out 2, I end up with 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I end up with 1x squared in here minus 200 divided by 2 is 100. Remember, factoring is like dividing it out. Now I've factored my greatest common factor. Once you factor your greatest common factor, then you just want to go back to your rule of factoring. So here I have x squared minus 100. I know 100 is 10 squared. So I'm just going to rewrite this again as 2 times x squared minus 10 squared. So I know when I have x minus a number squared, I can break that down to x plus that number times x minus that number. So it will break down to x plus 10 times x minus 10. It has to equal 0. So I know 2 times some number plus 10 times some number minus 10 has to equal 0. Okay, what is that number equal to? Let's solve for x. So there's only 2 cases. Either x plus 10 has to be 0 or x minus 10 has to be 0, or both are 0. So that's why I need to solve for it. So I'm solve for x plus 10 equals 0 and x minus 10 equals 0. The opposite of plus is minus, so I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. I get x equals to negative 10. For here. On the other hand, I have minus 10, so I'm going to add 10 to both sides. And I get x equals 0 plus 10, which is positive 10. So I have my 2 answers. X is equal to negative 10 and positive 10. Those are the 2 things that if I plug in here, it's going to make this equation true. And I have my final answer. Now, notice, this answer right here is the opposite of this plus 10, right? And this answer right here, this positive 10, is the opposite of this minus 10. So it's always going to be like that when it comes to those. Alright, now let's talk about factoring trinomials. So